Hey everybody, Phil Bowen here with Alpine Electronics. In this video, we're going to cover the installation of our new 9-inch weather-resistant X409-WRA-JL for the new Wrangler and Gladiator vehicles. Everything you need to do the install is included right out of the box. So let's go grab our tools and we'll get started. So the first thing we want to do is disconnect the negative battery terminal. Okay, so now that we've got the battery disconnected, we're going to go ahead and disassemble the vehicle. We want to start by removing the knee bolster panel, and then we'll remove the HVAC controls, and then we can remove the media center with the window controls, and then we'll pull out the factory radio. All right, so we'll start by removing the knee bolster panel. Next, using a panel removal tool, we're going to remove the HVAC controls. Now, using either a Phillips screwdriver or a 7mm socket, we want to remove the window switch control panel. With the window switch panel removed, we want to remove the factory media port. We're going to be replacing it with the supplied upgraded media port that's going to include an HDMI input as well as USB and auxiliary input. To remove the media hub, you want to press in on the 4 clips that hold it in and then push it forward. Now we want to remove the 2 screws under the radio bezel here, and then we can release the clips across the top and remove the radio bezel. Now we want to remove the 4 screws that hold the factory radio in. If the Jeep came from the factory with either the heated seat package or the power inverter package, there's going to be a couple modules up underneath the steering column here we'll have to remove. This particular Jeep doesn't have them, so refer to the installation manual on the detailed instructions on how to switch those modules over to the supplied brackets. We'll also need to remove the upper roll bar panel, the A-pillar panel, and then the panel on the side of the dash here in order to run the Bluetooth mic wire and the GPS antenna wires. Using your panel removal tool, pop off the side panel. Next, remove the 2 10mm bolts that are behind the grab handle covers here so we can remove the A-pillar panel. In order to remove the upper roll bar panel, there's 4 T20 torque screws that hold it on. There's 2 on the bottom and then there's 2 on the top. Okay, so now that we have the Jeep disassembled, now we can start on the install. Now that we've got everything laid out on the workbench, we can begin assembling the unit and get it ready for the install. We'll start by mounting the display bracket onto the back of the display. Next, we'll mount the brain unit into its mounting bracket. So now that we've got the brackets installed on both the brain unit and the display, the next thing we want to do is install the GPS antenna and the Bluetooth microphone. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is mount the GPS antenna. The GPS antenna goes on top of the roll cage on the metal surface, and then the wire will route across the top pillar here and then down the front. So the simplest way to install the GPS antenna without taking the hard top off is you take the plug in, insert it through the top, pull it through on the other side, and then you could remove the double-sided tape and stick the antenna to the top of the roll bar. Okay, now using the supplied clips, we're gonna attach the GPS antenna wire along the top of the roll cage, and then we'll run it down the A-pillar along with the Bluetooth microphone. And now we'll mount our Bluetooth microphone. Okay, now with the GPS antenna and the Bluetooth wires both run to the A-pillar, now we'll run them down the A-pillar, behind the dash, and down to where the radio unit's going to mount. Okay, next we're going to run the main harness. One end of it will plug into the factory wiring. The other end will route down below the steering column where the main brain unit is going to go. All right, so at this point we're going to go ahead and install the factory backup camera retention module. This module converts the LVDS signal from the factory backup camera to an analog signal to allow us to plug into the aftermarket radio. First, we'll take the factory backup camera connector and we'll connect it to the red plug on the module. And then we'll take the supplied power connector for the module and plug it in. Next, we'll take the other end of the power harness and plug it into the matching connector in the radio harness. Next, we'll take the CAN bus connector and connect it to the accessory CAN connector of the radio harness. Now take the supplied barrel connector, connect that to the video output, and then connect the supplied camera adapter. And then the other end of that will plug into our camera input of our radio harness. And now we will secure the module up in the radio cavity out of the way of the display. Now we'll go ahead and make our antenna connections, and then we'll hook up the main harness. The blue one here is your satellite radio. Connect that to the factory blue connector. The white connector is your AM/FM antenna. Plug that to the black connector. Next, we'll plug in the main harness. And then we can secure this all back in the radio cavity. Next, we want to take the CAN bus connector, run it down back behind the glove compartment, and then plug it into the distribution block that's located behind there. While we got the glove box down, what we'll do is we're going to take the chime speaker, we're going to secure it behind the glove box here, and then route the other end up behind the radio. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to program the Maestro module for the specific Jeep that it's going into. Go to idatalinkmaestro.com and follow the instructions on the website, or refer to the installation manual for the step-by-step instruction on how to do it. And now with our Maestro module programming complete, now we can go ahead and plug in the Maestro. Now the next step is we need to run our display power harness, our bezel harness, and our display cable from the radio cavity down to where the brain will mount. We'll run it along the same route that we ran the main harness. On the display power harness, you'll notice that there's two different connectors. The larger connector goes down towards the radio brain. Now slide the brain assembly up between the lower dash bracket and the lower dash support and secure with the supplied 8mm bolt. Now align the front of the bracket with the holes in the lower dash support and secure with the supplied 10mm bolts. Alright, now with our radio brain secure and mounted, we can begin to connect our radio connectors. Okay, now that we've got the brain secure and we've got all our power connections made, we can go ahead and install the display. First, we're going to take our display power harness and plug it in. And then we're going to take our display cable and plug it in as well. Now align the bracket with the 4 factory radio screw locations and secure using the factory screws. Alright, now basically the last step of the install, we need to install the new media hub. This hub replaces the factory one, and it gives you a USB port, a charging port, an auxiliary port, and an HDMI input. And now we need to run the power for our USB hub. Locate the auxiliary power connector coming off the main harness and route the power connector for the USB ports up through the bottom of the dash and plug it in to our auxiliary port. Now on our USB power splitter, there's 2 USB ports on there. Both of them are only for power, and one of them is to supply power to our USB in our media hub, and then the other one is to supply power to all the OEM USB ports so they retain their charging ability. The shorter of all of the USB ports on the media hub will plug into one side of the power splitter, and then using the supplied USB adapter, plug into the other side of the power splitter, and then plug the gray plug into the black plug of the OEM USB port. The 3 remaining connections we need to make are going to be our HDMI connection, our USB connection, and our auxiliary input all to the brain. First, we'll plug in our auxiliary plug. Then we'll plug in our HDMI in. And now we'll plug in our USB. Okay, now we've got all the components installed. Now we can start putting the vehicle back together. First, we're going to reinstall the window switch bezel. Next, we can install our HVAC controls. All right, next we'll reinstall the knee bolster panel. We can reinstall our dash side panel. Now we can reinstall the roll bar panel. And finally, we can reinstall our A-pillar panel. All right, now with the installation complete, last thing we need to do is snap the bezel on, and then we can test it.